Sabrina 70s comic, issue 61. Sabrina asks Harvey if there's something on his mind because he's being too quiet. He sighs and gets her excited by saying that he has something very important to say, and then says that he's hungry. That's forced. He would have just said he was hungry right away. And he's already said he loves her. He's hungry even though it's early for lunch, and Sabrina says there's a mediocre diner on the next block. They order stuff, and the woman calls out code phrases for what they ordered. I guess to be faster. Sabrina says she's not her sis, and she says lucky her because she's stupid. It shows Sabrina's restraint for once that she doesn't punish her for this. She says she wants a chicken sandwich, just to immediately change her mind because she's on a diet. And that's to make that just one piece of toast. She naturally doesn't want to change the order and says it takes 2 pieces to make a sandwich. And all she has to do is leave one off. Then Sabrina says she'll eat it with a knife and fork when sandwiches don't come with those. Both of them are being too difficult here. She could bring her a knife and fork. She orders something not on the menu. That's frustrating. Harvey says she can't win on her turf, playing the reasonable one. And the waitress gets Harvey's burger and chicken sandwich. She says he took his time, so Sabrina uses magic to make her drop them by mistake. The guy says that the plate's bending will be crazy talk, and says she's going nuts. Then Sabrina makes it so that some liquid from the Coke machine sprays at him. Why is it brown instead of black? That's awful looking. He assumes it's her doing that to him on purpose. And she figures out that Sabrina's a jinx. Then thanks to her, she sees Sabrina as a monster. That's kind of self-aware after how she's been acting. At least the monster thanks her. She screams and falls over. Sabrina tries to get her fired, though it was confusing at first that she said this with such a convincing expression of sincerity, as if she wasn't responsible for that problem. She can't be fired because she's his wife. He really settled. She quits and goes home to watch soap operas. Then out of nowhere, though it makes sense since she's a jerk, her husband says, "For years I've been trying to get her to stay home. You kids made my dream come true." To be fair, she was going to be really rude and difficult to every customer, and probably was. So this is a good thing that deserves a free meal. Though Sabrina was so much worse to her that it's hard to remember what she did wrong. It was mostly just Sabrina's fault for being an awful customer, and changing her mind about her order. Not surprised we got this extra happy ending. You'd think in situations like this, Della would give her an award, and she'd end the story looking unhappily at the audience. That'd get her to realize she's abusing her powers just like she wants. In the next comedy page, because Jughead and Archie and even Moose are cleaning up a polluted river for a long time, Sabrina recklessly uses her magic to help them right in front of them, levitating all the trash out of the river. Yeah, do something rash. Well, since the masquerade is always upheld, I guess she has a good reason to be aware of this and thinks there's nothing wrong with exposing magic. She scratches off her good deed for the daybook, which Della would hate her for having, and the story ends with Hilda saying she was hurt by flying to a big junk pile in the sky. Why didn't we see that? That'd be funnier, potentially, than visible slapstick. It sure is nice of Hilda not to lecture a witch like Sabrina for saying good heavens. In the next story, some girl we don't know asks Sabrina for help by name. If it weren't for Della, Sabrina would probably be known for helping everyone with their problems. And she'd get people asking her for help all the time. The nameless woman normally babysits the kid every night for the money, but she's got a great date this Friday, and doesn't want to miss it. Why can't she just ask for the date to be on a different day? Doesn't her boyfriend want to accommodate his own girlfriend? Oh good, we finally get to see a Rotterdam story in this comic. Sabrina's not happy about taking over for it because the parsing kid is a brat, even though she could just use magic to make it really easy. Freeze him in time, put him to sleep, make him act nice. A story about a witch being a babysitter and suffering can't work. She tells Sabrina to not make him mad and keep him happy. It's cathartic that Sabrina calls him a monster. She doesn't even know his name, somehow. The kid insults her appearance right away, asking if she lost the bet. I wish it was explained that he's just insulting her hairstyle, because I don't know why else he's doing this. What, her colorless freckles? Amy Rose does the bob haircut better. Sabrina's hair is just a circle around her head, attached the whole way. She supposes that brat wants to watch TV, and he says he doesn't want to talk to her. He wants to watch Totally Not Gilligan's Island. And Sabrina says they don't air reruns of that anymore. I guess he's used to watching DVDs of it. VCRs of it. Why doesn't Sabrina just... Well, I guess she's not nearly familiar enough with Gilligan's Island to magically make a fake episode of it that wouldn't confuse him. Never mind. He's shocked when she turns it on. She says she knows everything, and tells him not to strain his brain giving her a hard time. That was stupid of her. So predictably, he decides to throw her a curve she can't hit. It's so dumb of her not to use magic to make him good. Keep him quiet and still. It's not relatable at all. And all of this will be her fault. And yet she does love spells just fine. He messes with her by asking for a big bowl of plum peppermint ice cream. Sabrina reminds me of how she dealt with the last brat by agreeing to it because she could do anything. But I'm guessing she would heavily spoil her own child being a genie to her who can't say no. Although she's fine with abusing her powers against people as well at the slightest slight. So maybe she'd be a great mother, because she could at least discipline, while Hilda never does. She gives him what he wants, with the ice cream having macadamia nuts, which he's never seen before. Realistically, he'd hate the ice cream. Then after I suspected bad things would happen right after this, we cut ahead from the babysitting. But Janie's a bitch, telling her to not even talk to her, even though she did her a favor. It turns out she did her job so well that she stole her job, because he refuses to have anybody but Sabrina babysit him. That's realistic. And it would have been avoided if she had erased his memory of the experience out of the paranoia that she'd get discovered as a witch if he told anyone about the non-existent flavor ice cream he got. It's underwhelming that the story ends so soon. I thought that brat would do a lot more. It would have been better if the only panel where we'd see Janie again would be the final one. In the next story, a vampire says that while his vacation to America has been interesting, he misses the fun of frightening villagers in Transylvania. Oh, never mind, he's not the vampire cousin of Hilda. Instead, he targets Sabrina's family, thinking she's a normal family. He calls Salem a creature of the night, a stupid, stilted line. And Salem thinks, I'm not a creature of the night, you boob, I'm a Salem. And Salem hits him with a burning thunderbolt in the rear. That was awesome. Although, it was stilted that he said he's a Salem and not a cat, or a magic cat. You'd think that the second that the vampire saw Hilda, he'd realize that she has to be a witch. You'd think vampires would know witches exist, even on Earth. Because Hilda even has vampires in her family. So naturally, she's not scared when she says she hasn't seen a man turn into a Transylvanian bat. But yes, she has vampire cousins. I guess they've never turned into bats in front of her. The Sabrina family has a framed picture of a vampire on their wall. You'd think he'd react to it. I guess it makes sense that he assumed she was just a mortal in a costume because that was far more likely. But come on! She turns herself into a Louisville bat. A baseball bat that floats. Somehow. He thinks he must have just imagined it. He's a vampire, and I know that vampires know about witches. He must be a really sheltered vampire. Like how Sabrina in the 90s comic didn't know leprechauns and pixies existed until she met them herself. Hilda giggles, and thinks that was one of Ambrose's warlock friends just trying to tease her. I don't think I like this story anymore, because the characters are too stupid. Why doesn't she know this is a vampire when she's seen vampires before? Maybe all the vampires she's met are also warlocks. The vampire says good evening to Ambrose and shows him he has no reflection. Ambrose keeps smiling and says, why don't you take my reflection? He thinks he's losing his mind. This has to be in a parallel universe where vampires don't know about witches. Then he gets thirsty for blood, only because he sees an attractive woman. So Rick and Morty was right, it really is a metaphor for that. Why does it have to be though? Won't he want blood from everyone, or else his species would go extinct from being so picky? Does he only get helped by young women blood? All blood is basically the same aside from a difference in DNA and potential blood ailments. The vampire tells her to come here because he's hungry at snack time. She tells him that all the snack places in town are closed at this hour. She's naturally not scared of him because she's seen vampires before and been perfectly fine, even after they slept in her house. Instead of simply zapping up some snacks for him to eat, or some blood in a bag, more intelligently, she just changes the time of day outright so that all the restaurants will be open. I guess she reversed time, and made her and him equally unaffected. He screams because it's daytime, and she's surprised that he doesn't appreciate it. How? Maybe all the vampires she met are immune to the daylight allergy because they're also part witch. But how can any vampire be part anything if they turn others into vampires? Sabrina should have done this on purpose to defeat the vampire. Why does she have to be a dumb ditz? It's not usually funny. But I'm used to Sabrina's idiocy being a standard part of her character. She's not a character I expect to be cool. The story ends with the vampire running away. So stereotypical that I don't even know his name. And Salem somehow thinks he misjudged him because he left his soft cape to sleep on, even though that was clearly unintentional. In the next story, Della wants to retire, and Hilda thinks she's stupid for it. Why? Della sucks as head witch. She's always been stupid and doesn't even have the heart to punish people. I'm guessing the comic won't have the guts to make this last the entire comic, which is a shame because why couldn't it? Della says uncharacteristically that she's just tired of witching in general, rather than being mad at her for calling her stupid. Enchantra is such a badass by comparison, but at least I can kind of respect Della because she's way less likely to punish people. But she comes off as more evil than her because she encourages witches to be evil, which has a huge amount of consequences. So why doesn't she have a really short temper like her? She interestingly says that she'd like to be an ordinary human to see what that's like. Hilda says that she can already tell her what it'd be like. Out of nowhere, she says that if she changes herself to look human, she'd look extremely old. She'd just be a pile of dust she'd vacuum up next time she cleaned. That's kind of an amusingly dark sentence for her to joke about. She says she'll remain a witch and just retire from a position of power. That was fast. Shouldn't it have been obvious that if she became human, she'd also make herself the physical age that she looks? Also, since when is 800 years old young for a witch? Hilda was intimidated by witches that were only 600 years old, and they all had white hair. Is this a parallel universe? Anyways, Hilda stupidly says that Della should take a week off and move in with Sabrina, despite all the trouble she causes Sabrina with her constant nagging. Which would not let her be a normal common person. A normal person would not be able to live with some random family she's not related to without them being her foster family. She'd have to get a job and be homeless at first. Della says that she's giving up that power because she wants to sample the easy, carefree life, feeling crushed by all the responsibilities. Ambrose welcomes her right away, as I wonder why he and Sabrina are completely miserable about this. I can't stand Della lecturing Sabrina about being good for even one more time. An easy, carefree life would not be the normal, common life. Della wakes up from a nice sleep and wants to have juice, cereal, eggs, bacon, toast, and coffee. Ambrose asks her to make some for her, and so does everyone else, somehow not realizing based on how Della is that she wanted to be tended to. It does humanize her to see her like this. She's expected to not only cook, but also clean and make the beds, because that's what new additions to the family do. I wonder if Della will punish her for this later. How do they not expect that? How do they have the guts? Somehow, she doesn't punish them, but realistically, she also decides to leave right away. The story ends with them all laughing because that's just what they wanted to happen. Sure, a normal life would involve this kind of work, but she hasn't even gotten a job yet. Woman in the 70s or not, she would have to get a job to support herself on her own, but it's realistic for her to give up this fast. The first story is about Sabrina going to a diner with Harvey and the waitress gives her a hard time. Because she wants to change her order right away, and she won't give her a knife and fork for a sandwich. So she's rude to Sabrina and her husband, causing Sabrina to use magic to get her to quit. Then there's a happy ending because the husband wanted it to happen, and they get free meals as a reward. The second story has Sabrina be a great babysitter with her magic, because she can zap up impossible stuff for the brat, before he'd even get the chance to be a big problem, though he sucked up to that point. I liked seeing that. That story had more she could do. Too bad there's a downer ending where Janny hates Sabrina because now she'll never get hired again since she can't compete with Sabrina. That could have easily been avoided. Sabrina would have just cast a spell to make him fall asleep for the entire duration of her visit. The third story is about a vampire confusingly reacting as if he doesn't know witches exist because he freaks out at Sabrina's entire family, instead of just going, "Oh, they're witches, I'll go to the other family instead." Since we saw that Hilda has vampire cousins, how has she never seen this bat transformation before? She has a framed picture of a vampire on her wall. This has to be a parallel universe. So it's constantly annoying how confusingly ignorant everyone in the story was. I loved the idea of the story. Even a vampire would be freaked out at witches, and Sabrina easily got him to run away. It was surprisingly merciful of the story to not kill him immediately when the sunlight hit him. That's something that makes this comic great. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's always at least tongue-in-cheek. So even when bad things happen, it's usually clear that's supposed to be a joke. The final story is about Della immediately giving up on her retirement as head witch because she was expected to do household chores when living with Hilda out of nowhere. The story wouldn't be so confusing if we saw the family openly talk to each other about how they planned to get Della to leave, making it clear that they wanted her to leave. Instead, I'm wondering why they're expecting her to do chores. The family laughs because this is just what they want to happen, which surprised me because they were great actors acting like they were just fine with her moving in before. I'm so glad Della went the whole story without nagging Sabrina to be evil.